Redding is full of so much potential, but how do we actually turn that into real jobs, thriving businesses, and long-term growth? Well, that's where Shasta EDC comes in. Today, I'm joined by their CEO, Rebecca Baer, to dig into how they're helping shape Redding's future and what that means for all of us who call this place home. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Rooted in Redding. I'm Faith Barrett, your local guide to everything here in Redding. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to hit that like button, comment below, and subscribe as we post weekly updates about Redding and the housing market as a whole. Today, I'm super excited to dive in to the economic growth of Redding, especially from the perspective of Rebecca Baer. So in today's episode of Rooted in Redding, I am super excited because I've actually wanted to do this interview for quite some time. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. You've been in and out of our videos infrequently for some of the big developments happening in Redding. And, I think overall, as Redding has been more and more on the map, pros and cons as people figure out if it's a place they want to live. Job growth, the economy is always a huge thing because if I'm going to move my whole family here, is it going to be a place that sustains my family in future, retirement here and whatnot. So for those of you who are new to our channel, I'm Faith Barrett, your local guide to everything here in Redding. Today we're sitting down with Rebecca Baer, who is with Shasta EDC, and this is a huge part of Redding, obviously, anytime we talk about economics and growth. And so before really getting into some of the nuts and bolts of Redding itself, why don't you share what is your job role here and kind of like your background specifically for Redding?
Yeah, so I've just lived in Redding for about 4.5 years. So we are newcomers and made the decision to actually move from the Bay Area. Just a funny story, when we moved here, we were afraid to tell people that we were from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
I grew up in Indiana and my husband grew up on a dairy farm in Mountain View. And so that was exactly what we told people because we weren't sure how people would react, to folks coming in. Good news is that the secret's out. We moved from the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And we love it here. Everybody's been so welcoming. And it's just been a really great community. I've been in this role as president and CEO at Shasta EDC for about 1.5 years. I've done everything in my career that the EDC does, including working at an airport and air service development. The ironic thing is that I did all that work, never in the context of economic development. So I spent the last 1.5 years getting to know the community really well, getting to know who our stakeholders are and how we can make Redding exactly what we want to make it for the future. But I've also gotten to know economic development really well, and that's where I've spent a lot of my time is learning economic development and how we could leverage all the things that I've done in my career, including commercial real estate, like I said, airport, and then really selling a destination, how we can leverage all that experience to move economic development forward in the region.
What does Shasta EDC do for Redding?
Yeah, so the thing really the Economic Development Corporation of Shasta County does, we focus on 4 pillars. The first is the business attraction. That's, going outside of our area and bringing people in. And those decisions are made on a number of different factors I think we'll talk about.
Yeah.
The second thing we do is help businesses stay here and grow. And that's a big way that we grow our local economy is by helping local businesses grow. We run Startup Redding. So my little tagline is that a healthy economy includes a healthy startup ecosystem. And for a place like Redding in Shasta County, that startup piece is critically important. We don't have a list of people, waiting to buy land in Redding or waiting to move to Redding. I think that's going to change, over the next 5 or 10 years. But for right now, our best shot at growing the economy is helping our local businesses grow and helping people in our community start businesses. Totally. So supporting those entrepreneurs. And then outside of those 3 things, we actually work with the city of Redding and Redding Regional Airport to grow air service. And so we know that having air service in our community is an economic driver. It helps businesses grow. It helps people get here easier. in addition to all the leisure travel that people do, that business travel piece and having those connections is critically important to the health of our economy.
Yeah. Where do you feel like job-wise, or industry-wise, is kind of taking a majority of a win in Reading?
Yeah, what's really interesting about our economy right now is that we know medical is our largest industry here. And I think everybody is going to continue to focus on medical. We have a need as a community to grow services and to recruit and retain medical professionals. So that's a really big piece of what a lot of people in the region are working on. We talk a lot about wood and wood products, and then we have retail, obviously, is a big piece of what we do because it serves a regional area. So while the community is only a certain size, that wouldn't necessarily in other communities support the scale of retail that we have here. It's because we're a regional hub for retail, and a lot of people will drive distance, to come to Reading, to get supplies, to get food, to stock up here on the things that they need. And then I think we already have a really robust manufacturing pipeline. And one of the neatest things about the past year and a half for me has been getting to know those manufacturers and getting to know how cool the products they make. And I think a lot of people here don't actually know how many cool things are being made in Reading that support industries all across the globe. And so we have specialty medical manufacturers here. We have some food producers or in our companies here that support, food or food manufacturing. And then we actually have some really revolutionary products or innovative products that are coming out in that fire mitigation and, fire space to keep our forests healthy and to keep that wood and wood products industry.
It's little healthy footprints in Reading that most people wouldn't assume would come out of Reading is coming out of Reading, which is really cool.
Yeah, we're just so modest. I think that's the one thing I notice being, from living different places is that what we have here and what we do is really cool. We're just really modest about it, and we don't, we just don't brag. We're just not bragging enough, I think, about all the really cool things here. And then also, I think that we're going to see some impact in the warehouse and distribution space as markets like Sacramento get built out, and as Portland continues to expand. Reading is right in the middle of San Diego and Seattle. You can reach 33 million West Coast customers within a day's drive. And so when those logistics companies are looking at where their next move is, I think Reading's on the list already.
That's really cool. So if we looked at it in terms of, what type of industries are coming, like we chatted, let's focus on a small business. So let's say it's something in the food industry, like a restaurant. How does EDC come in and support the small business owners?
Yeah, so traditionally the EDC has been focused on really big projects. We want 200 jobs, or we want companies that are going to, take down 35 acres and build something that really hits the economy. And so the way the EDC would support a small business like a restaurant is through our Startup Reading program. And that's a network of people in the community, entrepreneurs, small business owners. We support that group with monthly startup sessions where folks can get together and really share experiences and have some accountability with other like-minded entrepreneurs in the community. And then what we provide are subject matter experts or folks that have had experiences building businesses in our community, so they can kind of offer their expertise or share their experiences to encourage the group that's there, or sometimes to commiserate, the group. But anytime a business wants to grow and scale, we can definitely assist with those connections and resources around the tools they need to be successful.
We chatted before with Todd with Visit Reading and then Chamber of Commerce and everything like that. Is that a partnership between you guys? Like, I know Startup Reading almost is a little bit different than Chamber, but at the same time, like, how would you say that goes hand in hand?
Yeah, the EDC has a lot of partners. And so when we think about all the work that we do, it's really important for us. We're telling a story about Reading. So we work with Visit Reading and we work with Choose Reading on the hotel side. We all really want to be telling the same story, or at least really embrace the commonality that we have as a community, and then everybody takes their own spin or their own angle. We work with the Chamber in a way that supports small business, and their program is a little bit different than ours, and how they really wrap around small business and support through that networking piece and that kind of business to business networking is really important. And I think that's just a piece of creating that successful startup community.
Yeah. For somebody who's coming to our area, how is like the job market of Reading? Like, or is it a high unemployment rate? Like, is it positive? Is there jobs to be found? Like, I mean, how would you put a read on that for Reading?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to plug our economic dashboard on our website, shastaedc.org, because all of these statistics are listed on the dashboard and in our data center, and we're always updating that information. And so there's some really cool tools that you might learn a few things about our area that you didn't know before. We actually have a really high college graduate rate, and we have a high master's degree rate as well. Our median income might be a little higher than you think.
Yeah.
So I want to just encourage everybody to go to our website and take a look at that. And I promise you'll learn at least one thing you didn't know about the area. In terms of the job market here, and we work with a lot of partners on workforce development, and there are a lot of people in the city who this is the work they do.
Yeah.
So we're just a partner of those organizations being able to talk about this. We actually have low unemployment. And so I think that when we talk about workforce development, what we want to do is to create more higher paying jobs. And really, I think one of the major tenets of economic development, and one of the things that we do for the community, is to help people realize the life that they want to live. So our job is to create opportunity and create sustainable economic growth. So we're not just like flash in the pan, something comes and then they leave, and we have to pick up the pieces of that we know that we're going to create this long-term economic growth that gives people in our community the opportunity that they want to afford the lives they want to live. And that's a spectrum. Yeah. So when we look at workforce development in that particular piece, we actually just need more people. We need more people here to fill the jobs that we have, because a lot of people in Reading and Shasta County are working.
Yeah.
And I think also eliminating some of the barriers. When we talk, this is a much bigger kind of workforce development conversation, but eliminating the barriers that the people in our community have for work. And so for some of the people in our really super rural communities, that could be transportation.
Yep.
Right? Or it could be internet connection. And so that's, as a bigger group working on workforce development, those are the things that I think we're looking at to say, how can we get more people into the workforce here? Because as we continue to recruit companies here or help companies here grow,
you want to attract people.
We want people here to be able to fill those jobs. And then, like Shasta College has an economic and workforce development division. They're working directly with industry and directly with local employers to make sure that they're preparing their students with specific skill sets. And one in particular with two companies that have really doubled in size over the last 12 months is welding. They have an absolutely incredible welding program. And when we think about our manufacturers, two specifically that we've worked with in the last year, hire straight out of that welding program. And so
got it. So it's like the partnership of schools, industry to it's like a connection piece
Yeah, it's a connection piece. And then the other piece of that is actually housing. And so I'm really happy to have this conversation, and I'm sure you know this. But if we think about in 5 years that we could potentially have a few hundred more jobs, we have to have the housing for those few hundred more people or a few hundred more families to come into our community.
Yeah.
And housing is expensive to build. So we are really trying to work with employers, workforce development, developers for housing. And then we're over here, trying to get people into those programs, but getting people from those programs.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely an ecosystem where partnerships matter.
Yeah, we have growth in Amazon's coming, this person, this manufacturer, like there's a lot of big things happening, but then the population growth size seems to be at a little bit of a different rate than some would hope to be at. And I think one, it's a rural area. So it's kind of, helping the outsiders understand like what our lifestyle is that we have to offer here. I also think it's not like Sacramento, so it's, different.
Yeah.
And so it's just an entirely different kind of lifestyle in general. How would you speak to like maybe the vision? I know we don't want to like forecast too much, but like, where do you kind of see the vision of Reading in the next 5 to 10 years? For the population, or for what would really put us more on the map for?
Yeah, I think as it relates to population growth, the city's 2045 plan, I think, is like 17,000 more people by 2045. And there are different ways to measure population growth. So that's just one metric that they use, some data sources for. There are more conservative estimates out there.
Yeah.
And I do know that Reading hasn't realized that population growth at the rate that they expected. In previous years. So lots of people are in rooms talking about that and how we can prepare our city. One of the things when we talk about, creating an environment where people want to live, and you said like kind of the way of life here is a couple of things, right? I call it the vibe score. One of the things we can, we know we're on I-5. We know that we can reach 33 million customers. We know that we have a great utility, which is a huge advantage for Reading, that we have REU because the rates are much lower and the time to get connection is much shorter than businesses who, are opening and have to wait for service to come in when it's not REU. So that's a huge competitive advantage for our city as we're recruiting businesses. We know how far away from a port we are, which I think people go like, port. It's actually the Port of Stockton is the closest port to Reading. And we get these requests for information where we're filling in all of this just data.
Yeah.
And we don't change that data.
Yeah.
So, but what we do have control over is how people feel when they're in our community. So we could check every single box on that. It's like almost 10 different things that people are making decisions about. Do we have the workforce? Do we have the infrastructure?
Housing.
Right, housing, all those things. Where we can control what happens is how do people feel when they come into our community?
Right.
And people want to live in a thriving and vibrant community. And so I think that what I feel so optimistic about is that there are so many people working right now to make our community more vibrant, more thriving, and to really stake some identity around who we are as a community.
Yeah.
But I also think too that for people that are coming from bigger cities, there is a transition time. And I think we have to realize that that we are different here in a good way. We have much better work-life balance. You could leave work and be on a hiking or biking trail within 20 minutes.
Right.
You can be at a lake within 20 or 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And those are things that are not accessible to people in big cities. And so it's almost like the time that people need to decompress from all the hustle and bustle and like the life they live. No traffic, right? Like there's 10 minutes of traffic in the morning.
Yeah, 10.
That's about it, And so, and in one intersection in the city that I, see. So it's really interesting that we have all of these really good metrics for work-life balance. We also have a much lower cost of living compared to other California cities. Housing is more affordable here, and you could still raise a family here, buy a house on a one-income household. And that's a really unique feature.
Yeah.
But when people come in, they have to know, how are the schools? Where are the parks? Turtle Bay is huge. They do so many things. And so where do I take my kids during the day? Those kinds of things. So where do we recreate? What's our lifestyle going to be when we get here? And so we've had a lot of success, and our, employer partners have had a lot of success when they've recruited people that want this work-life balance. We've also had a lot of success recruiting people who grew up in Redding or grew up in a town or city like Redding. And so they went to school and then they're like, we liked that slower pace, or we liked that work-life balance. And so we're going to come back. So I think that people aren't used to in EDC talking about quality of life, but quality of life and a high quality of life is a requirement for economic development.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that we actually have, control over.
Yeah. I've lived here my whole life, so lifestyle and being outdoors, it's like I always tell people, like, you got to love the outdoors to thrive here in Redding. Otherwise, sometimes it could be a little bit of a different change of life pace if you're wanting that Bay Area life, night culture, which I think I'm excited for, like downtown as they open the public market. And, we keep things to what we can scale well here in Redding versus like saying we can do all these things and not having the infrastructure and the support to actually carry that out well. With that being said, obviously Redding is small. Like you said, I think one of the big things is raising the initial kind of wealth that like a family would make so that they can. I know California's expensive. So there's one big larger umbrella problem we have is just like there's regulations that the state has that like we obviously have to fall under. California itself is expensive with fire insurance and all different outside factors. In regards to people specifically in our area, do you feel like sometimes the changes of like businesses shutting and closing and people moving on, is that from a statewide like level of just people are tired of California, which we could maybe say that, or do you feel like on a citywide, it's that the economics here of people being able to support those businesses is challenging, or would you say it's both?
Yeah, well, I'm going to offer a third alternative to that. I think a lot of times we talk about California, and as a business owner or people who live here, we talk a lot about all of those woes of California. And I'm an optimist. And, our organization genuinely wants to represent the best of what we have to offer.
Yeah.
So California is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But when I talk to businesses and I get the list of things that California could be doing differently to support business, I actually don't disagree. Okay, like there are some things that California could do to make the state a little more business friendly. But after I get done listening to all those woes, I go, so why are you here? Right? And it's opportunity. And so I think that's where, I want to focus my time and energy on, is that we really just have to accept, where we are as a state, and realize that we're playing with a different, set of cards than other states are. But really, this is, as a state, we're the fourth largest economy. And there's a ton of opportunity here. And I think that translates to the North State. We have land availability that, that land is still affordable. So for a business that wants to move from a more metropolitan area, a more congested area, we have that availability here.
Right.
We have that lower cost of, living.
Yeah.
That's opportunity. Is it going to cost you a lot to build a building? Are you going to have to pay your employees more? Yes. Your HR practices going to be really regulated, and all the things that we hear about doing business in California, that's a level playing field for everybody. So I think we just really do ourselves a favor by talking about the opportunity that we have, not only as a city, county, and region, but like the opportunity that people have realized in California. So when we go out and market Shasta County, Redding, Stillwater Business Park is one of only 2 fully entitled sites in the state of California. And the EDC and the city of Redding had this vision 20 years ago to fully entitle that land. And we're going to see the results of that vision in a very short amount of time here. Those are the kinds of things we want to focus on. I don't know that we would have a ton of success recruiting companies from other parts of the country, but certainly recruiting companies from other parts of the state. And so we are focusing our marketing efforts on advertising Stillwater, advertising other available land that we have, all of the things that we talked about in terms of those boxes we want to check. And then promoting how really great it is to live here. That's where we spend our time and energy.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you've already accepted California, then like creating a better place to thrive and build your business in California here in the North State. Yeah. Which I totally agree with. Like, I mean, everybody's going to have their own perspective of California, and there's only so much you can change and be optimistic and, being in this industry. And then also being a business owner myself, I'm like, I want to be positive. Like, it's not perfect. There's ways we could change it so many different ways. And, obviously money does a lot with that in terms of infrastructure, building, growth, and development. But, we're a small mom and pop town. Like, that's kind of like how I sometimes explain it to people. But we're also like I feel like on a brink of a really cool change of putting ourselves on the map for, Amazon, the growth of downtown, all these just different things that there's a lot of heartbeat for people who have lived in Redding for so long to make it a better place. Before we wrap up, if I was moving to Shasta County, and let's just say I had a job, would there be anything specific that Shasta County would be besides the Stillwater Business Park? Because I myself wouldn't have a business that large enough to fill that. Would there be anything else in Shasta County that would incentivize me that Shasta County does for small business owners that I may not think about why I should choose Northern California over, I don't know, another part of California?
Yeah. I'm just going to preface this that this is probably not going to be the right, answer, but because
it could be one of many.
I've only been in this role for a year and a half.
Yeah.
So looking at what those incentive packages are, and trying to think about ways that we can support businesses in our community, large and small, is a really important role that the EDC can play.
Yeah.
But really what's happening in economic development now, and especially in California, is that the incentives have become less important. Especially in Redding and Shasta County, any incentive that you take advantage of is going to trigger a prevailing wage. And so, our wages here are lower than prevailing wage, as declared by the state. And so oftentimes people aren't going to take the incentive so that they can get the project done in a more economical way. But really, in economic development, everywhere, the incentives are becoming less and less important. And what's becoming more important is the amount of time it takes to get the building built and to get the doors open. And so until those doors are open and until those businesses are selling something, we don't benefit as a community, right? So from economic development and this ecosystem that we talk about, where economic development interjects into the economy is through sales tax, and business tax and property tax, right? And so those are the things that our municipalities and government agencies collect that add money into our economy. And so really what the government can do is to make that process smoother, easier, and reduce the amount of time it takes to get the doors open selling things. I mean, those delays can be critical.
Yeah. It's, we've built projects before, houses, and it's just like trying to go through the whole permit process and the state regulations and even the county regulations. It's just like, how could we expedite this and but also do it safely and not cut costs and all these different things. I mean, it's obviously not a problem that you and I can solve today, or it's definitely a much bigger, solution that has to come for a healthy, positive growth. But
yeah, it's not unique to Redding. It's not unique to Shasta County. I mean, every place in California, you're in California, and we know what that means. I really have a hope that our local agencies are able to figure out a way, with feedback from the community, with help from the EDC, the chamber, other partners. I really want us to figure out a way to do that so that we can be a model for other, cities, counties, and towns in our state for how we do treat businesses when they're trying to open or trying to build, because we know how important it is, to make that happen quickly. So I think that when we think about long term, where my thoughts are in terms of where we're going, like that's a really critical piece. And I know my EDC board feels really strongly about continuing to create a business-friendly climate. And I know that's on the radar with our public partners as well. And so there are a few people that have figured it out. There are projects we've figured it out for, and that's like a double-edged sword because we know we can do it. But now it's like, how do we scale that? And how do we do it for every project? And so the good news is that, in some of these cases, we have answers and we've figured it out. And there are people out there that love and have had great experiences working with our government agencies through those processes. And so how do we replicate that and how do we scale that in the community?
Well, I mean, I feel like this has been such a helpful episode and just kind of breaking down, where Reading is in number wise in some regards, like the behind the scenes. Curious if you have any additional thoughts or if, people wanted to get connected, kind of wrap it up in maybe something that, I don't know, we didn't talk about that you feel like would be beneficial for somebody watching.
Yeah, I think that when you think about economic development and how we grow our economy, one thing that I really would like everybody to know is that we grow that by bringing outside dollars in. And so it is incredibly important to support local because we're taking our dollars and trading them within our economy. And that's important to keep those dollars local. But it's also critically important to support the businesses, the manufacturers, the warehouse and distribution customers we have, the restaurants, the wholesalers, the folks that are making a product here and selling it outside of Shasta County, outside of California, outside of the United States. Those businesses bring what we call primary dollars into our economy, and it's the primary dollars that help our economy grow. So instead of just trading dollars back and forth, I buy a house, you spend your, earnings on things within Shasta County, we're just trading dollars. But if you sell a house outside of Shasta County and you bring those dollars that weren't in Shasta County before in, that's what grows the economy. So when we talk about manufacturing, when we talk about wood and wood products, we really want to think about how do we support those businesses, large and small, who sell things outside of our county and bring that money in.
Yeah, it's a circle of life that keeps on giving a little larger, a little wider.
Yep.
Where could people find and get connected, especially if they have direct questions or resources for business, for where you guys are obviously plugged in online?
Yeah, shastaedc.org is our website, and our email address that goes to our general email that everybody sees is edc@shastaedc.org. But again, just want to plug that website and that dashboard on our website. Also would be remiss if I didn't thank all the partners that the EDC works with. I mean, we don't do this work in a vacuum, and it's only because of the support that we get from our public partners, our private investors, but the other partnerships that we have, that we can actually do this work and move our community forward.
Yeah. Well, very cool. Well, thanks so much again for tuning into this week's episode of Rooted in Reading. Our special guest, Rebecca. And as always, we will catch you next week.